as Jane said, I was the founding director of the Carson McCullers Center for Writers and Musicians 16 long years ago now. More recently, though, I edited Carson McCullers' unfinished autobiography, which was titled Illumination in Night Glare, and just this year edited the final volume of her collected works for the Library of America. Her collected works are now available in a 2-volume set from the Library of America. This has just been published about 2 weeks ago. I was asked to say a few words about A Tree, a Rock, a Cloud, the story upon which Karen Allen's film, which we'll be showing later, actually in March, here in Columbus. Did I say Columbus? In Nyack. And you'll have the opportunity, I think, to meet the director. I've also been asked to introduce Patrick Donovan, who will be performing an adaptation of the short story for us this afternoon. But to say a bit about the short story itself, A Tree, a Rock, a Cloud was written in Columbus, Georgia, in February of 1942. It first appeared in Harper's Bazaar magazine in November of that year. McCullers wrote the story during a particularly difficult time in her life. She and her husband, Reeves McCullers, were divorcing after only 5 years of marriage. And at this time, she had, at only age 25, the first of a series of strokes that would plague her for the rest of her life. Due to the damage done by a misdiagnosed childhood case of rheumatic fever, that were the causes of her strokes. She wrote in her autobiography, Illumination in Night Glare, of the period immediately following this first stroke. She wrote, "So I rested those dreadful months, praying that my senses would come back to me. Then a marvelous thing happened. I conceived a tree, a rock, a cloud, and soon I got to the typewriter and began to write. It seemed that the horror disappeared almost as quickly as it came. I remember when I finished A Tree, a Rock, a Cloud, I burst out crying with thanksgiving and emotion, but the sinister illness that haunted my life had asserted itself. I lived for the rest of my life in a constant fear of strokes." At the time of this first stroke, McCullers had been at work on her novel, The Member of the Wedding. Her work on A Tree, a Rock, a Cloud, and its meditation on the nature and difficulty of love allowed her to return to and complete the novel. Loving too much, yet being loved too little in return, McCullers in A Tree, a Rock, a Cloud theorizes that perhaps we have this thing we call love all wrong, that we begin at the end with the most difficult, like a novice ice skater, perhaps beginning with the quadruple salchow. It's my pleasure now to introduce Patrick Donovan, who's going to be reading an adaptation of the short story, A Tree, a Rock, a Cloud. Patrick?
Hello. Hello there.
Hello.
I don't want to tease you. I've got something important to say. I have to explain. This is important. Look. Take a look. Did you get a good look? Can you see her? Do you know who she is? Recognize her? No? Good. That was my wife. Dead? No. No. Let me explain. I'm talking about love. Now, with me, love is a science. "12 years ago, I married the woman in the photograph. She was my wife for 1 year, 9 months, 3 days, and 2 nights. I loved her. Yeah. I loved her. I thought also that she loved me. I was a railroad engineer. She had all the home comforts and luxuries. I had never crept into my brain that she was not satisfied. But do you know what happened? She left me. Yeah. I came home one night and the house was empty. And she was gone. She left me. Yeah, with another fella. Yeah, son, a woman like that doesn't just run off by herself. It was like this. I've always been a person who feels things, many things. All my life, one thing after another has impressed me. Moonlight, the leg of a pretty girl. Just one thing after another. But the point is, when I had enjoyed anything, there was this peculiar sensation inside of me. Nothing, it was as though everything was just lying around there inside. Nothing was finished. Women, yeah, I had my share of them. The same afterwards, all lying around, all loose inside of me. Nothing fit in with the other things. Nothing seemed to finish itself. I was a man that had never loved. When I met this woman, I was 61 years old, and she always said she was 30. I met her at a filling station, and we were married within 3 days. Ah. And you know what that was like? I just can't tell you. Oh, buddy, that was. I just can't tell you all the things that I had ever felt was all gathered inside me, all gathered around this woman. Nothing lay around loose anymore. Everything was brought together and finished up by her. I'm not explaining that right. What happened was this. There were these beautiful feelings, these loose little pleasures inside me. And this woman was something like an assembly line for all these things, an assembly line for my soul. I run all these little pieces through her, and I came out complete, everything finished. Now do you follow me? I called her Dodo. Yeah, but that's immaterial. Under the circumstances, you can imagine how I felt when she left me. I took a number of steps to get her back. I went around trying to locate her. Went to Tulsa, where she had folks, to Mobile. I went to every town she ever mentioned. I contacted every man she had ever connected with. Tulsa, Atlanta, Chicago, Memphis. For the better part of 2 years, I chased her around this whole country, trying to just lay hold of her. Forget those 2 years. They're not important. What matters is that around the 3rd year, something curious began to happen to me. Well, love is a pretty curious thing to begin with. And at first, I thought of only getting her back, but it was a kind of a mania with me. But then as time went on, I tried to remember her. But you know what happened? I'd lie down on the bed, and I'd try to think about her and bring her into my mind, but it was a blank, nothing. I'd get out her pictures, look at them, no good, nothing doing. I couldn't think of her, a blank. Can you imagine that? But a sudden piece of glass on the sidewalk, or a nickel tune in a music box, some shadows on the wall at night, and I'd remember. It might happen in the street, and I'd start to cry or just bang my head against a lamppost. You follow me? Anything. I could walk around and around, and I had no power over how or when to remember her. You think you can put up a kind of a shield, but remember, don't come to a man face forward. Kind of corners around and comes in sideways. I was at the mercy of everything I saw and heard. Suddenly, instead of me combing the countryside to try and find her, she began to chase me around in my soul. She chasing me, mind you, and in my soul. I was a sick one back then. It was like smallpox. I confess, son, that I boozed, I fornicated, I committed every sin that suddenly appealed to me. I'm loath to confess it, but I will do so. I will confess it. When I recall that period, it's all curdled up in my mind. It was all so terrible. Then, it was in the 5th year that it happened. And with it, I started my science. Peace. It's hard to explain scientifically. I guess the logical explanation is that she and I had fled around from each other for so long that finally we just got all tangled up and lay down and just quit. Peace. A queer kind of beautiful blankness. It was spring in Portland, and the rain came every afternoon. I just lay in my bed in the dark every night and just stayed there. And that's when the science started to come to me. Yeah. This is it. And listen carefully. I meditated on love and I reasoned it out. I realized what's wrong with us. Men fall in love for the first time. And what do we fall in love with? A woman. What's wrong with us? Without science, without nothing to go by, we undertake the most dangerous and sacred experience is on God's earth? To fall in love with a woman. Now that's the way it is, isn't it? We start at the wrong end of love. We begin at the climax. Is it any wonder why it's so miserable? You know how men should fall in love? Do you know how love should begin? A tree. A rock. A cloud. Yeah. The weather was like this in Portland at the time my science was began. I meditated and started out very cautious. I would pick something up from the street and bring it home. I bought a goldfish. And then I concentrated on my goldfish, and I found that I loved it. I loved that fish. I graduated from one thing to another, day by day. I was getting this technique on the road from Portland all the way down to San Diego. For 6 years now, I've gone around by myself, and I've built up my science. And now, I'm a master. I can love anything. No longer do I have to even think about it. I see a street full of people, and this bright light rises up in me. I see a bird on the wing, a traveler on the road. Everything, and anybody. All strangers, and all loved. Yeah. I've never fallen in love with a woman again. No. You see, that's the last step in my science. It's too soon for that. I'm not quite ready yet. But remember, just remember, I love you.
This is the program book for that program, which will feature performances of music that Carson loved. Music was really a central figure and a central part of her life and her art as well. You'll see that there's a photo of her on the porch of the house here in Nyack on the cover of that program. And that will also feature the same film that's coming here later in March. So they're getting a little sneak preview with the actress Karen Allen. So wanted to tell you about that. And also, and perhaps most importantly, to invite you all to a reception at the McCullers house, which is just about 3 blocks south of here. So it's a beautiful day, and if you don't mind walking, you can walk right up the street, or right down the street, I suppose. And if not, as I say, it's not far at all. And to let you know that immediately following this event, that reception will begin at the McCullers house, and we'd be delighted to see all of you there. And finally, to introduce the music this afternoon. It wouldn't seem to be complete to honor Carson McCullers without including some music. She first came to New York as a wide-eyed 17-year-old, intent on studying the piano at Juilliard. And her life took a different trajectory rather quickly, and you can read about what happened and how she became the writer that she did become. But this afternoon we have a graduate of the Schwab School of Music who was commissioned to write a work based on the short story A Tree in a Rocket Cloud. And I'm really delighted to say that this is Lilia Uge from Uzbekistan, who did her undergraduate studies at Kelowna State University and is now a doctoral student at Yale University. And she has written an extraordinary piece that you will get to hear of this afternoon. She's a 2016 Charles Ives Scholarship recipient from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, and a name you'll want to remember, a fine young composer who's really on her way and making an increasingly an international reputation. And she's joined in this performance by the distinguished American violist Paul Neubauer, whom we're delighted to have and welcome from the faculty of Juilliard, formerly the principal violist of the New York Philharmonic and an artist member of the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. So without further ado, I'm introducing them, and we'll get to say just a few words about her piece.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this event. I just want to say a few words how I wrote this piece. I was commissioned by the Carson McCullers Center and to write a chamber work. And there was a flexibility whom I choose as the performer and for which ensemble I would write a piece. And at that time, I had particular interest to write a piece for viola and piano, as I was working as a pianist for the viola studio at Yale School of Music. And I explored like a huge amount of repertoire for viola I didn't know before, and just to know how amazing the instrument itself is. And then I asked my composition teacher, Aaron J. Curtis, who's a Pulitzer winner composer, whom should I ask to play viola part? And he just said to me, I'll give you the name of the best violist in New York I know. And so he recommended me to Paul. And that's how I started writing this piece. And in this piece particularly, the story of Carson McCullers, which I didn't read before I was commissioned. So I basically didn't know Carson McCullers' work since I'm from another country. It was a new experience for me, and it was so strikingly beautiful. It went really deep in my soul, and I attempted to write a story that would reflect the emotional journey of the main hero. Of the main character, how I'll progress through the stages of the loneliness, of the search, of having someone, and then being betrayed, basically, and then a new search, and finding what seems for him a new science, but essentially there's still a question at the end, because he still says he didn't fall in love with a woman. He feels not ready. He feels not ready to trust another human in a close relationship. And that question, that pain and bitterness of this loneliness, which I think the story is about, not just love but loneliness. That's what I wanted to write a piece about. Thank you so much.